And welcome into the Week 7 roster show where the Fantasy 4-pack is breaking down our favorite trade fours, our favorite trade-aways, as well as whatever waiver wire madness is occurring this week. We, unfortunately, once again, have some more running backs who are going to be highly targeted in the waiver section, so definitely tune in for that. Before we dive into all of that good stuff, though, we're going to do some news for you guys. I'm going to lead in with the Cleveland Browns. They have a whole bunch of injury news, and they're on the Thursday game. Kareem Hunt with a calf is likely headed to the IR. He suffered this calf injury in Week 6. He was carted off the field as a result. Good news in the sense that it's not season-ending, but he's probably missing at least 6 weeks with this, from what early reports have said. So hopefully if you have Kareem Hunt, you have backup plans for get ways to get around him being gone, because he will not be out there this week, confirmed. David Njoku was limited with a knee in an estimated practice. Odell Beckham was limited with was a do not practice in an estimated practice with a shoulder. Nick Chubb was a DNP in this estimated practice with the calf injury that held him out of Week 6. Kevin Stefanski said he wouldn't rule out Chubb for Thursday yet, said while it is tough on a short week to get him back out there, he is progressing well. So I guess there's still hope that Chubb gets back out there on Thursday. If he does, I think he's in a smash spot with no Kareem Hunt in that backfield. And then Baker Mayfield was a DNP in the estimated practice with a shoulder. He's been saying, he was saying post-game that he intends to get out there this week, but that shoulder injury didn't look particularly comfortable. So I guess he's one that I'm a little hesitant to say I believe that. The player always wants to say they're going to be right back out there, but this is one where the injury could say otherwise.
I would look for streaming options.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Baker was a great option regardless in this upcoming game. So hopefully you weren't relying on him in the first place. Obviously, we were filming this episode before the Monday night show, but A.J. Brown is expected to be out there. He had an illness, but it seems like that illness has cleared his system enough to get into the game. So we'll see if he can return to traditional A.J. Brown form this week in a very tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills. Paris Campbell with a foot. He suffered a significant foot injury against Houston. It sounds like he will be missing some time. Frank Reich didn't, dive into how much time is some time, but when you're the head coach and you're saying that you have a player that's going to miss some time and you use the word significant, it makes me think at least 6 weeks.
Paris Campbell's made of glass.
Yeah, he has shown me nothing to this point in his career that makes me think he can actually stay on the football field.
Nope.
So, sucks. Seems like a talented kid, but
there's a reason I swapped off Campbell and moved to Pittman. It's just
the correct choice was made.
Yes. And Pittman also just looks like a stud. So Trey Lance was a DNP Monday with a knee, and Jimmy Garoppolo did return to practice with that calf injury. Jerry Jeudy, who has an ankle injury, has kept him out of football for a couple weeks now. He's expected to do full speed work in practice this week, but has less than a 50% chance of playing on Thursday. So you're probably going to have to wait at least one more week for Jerry Jeudy to really get back into your lineup. Alex Collins took a couple big hits this past week. He has a hip and a glute injury currently. Pete Carroll says that he may be able to play in Week 7. Pete Carroll likes to talk. I'm not going to try and overreact to what Pete Carroll has said. I'm gonna just watch the practice reports, see if Alex Collins can get out there, see how his body reacts to this week of practice. He obviously had a very good week last week. It seemed like the Seahawks were trying to run as much as possible with Geno at the helm. So if Alex Collins is out there again this week, he's another reliable running back option, at least, if not a great running back option. Kadarius Toney left early in Sunday's game with an ankle injury and did not return. Unfortunate, because he was looking excellent up until that point. Hopefully he gets back out on the field this week. He seems like a player that's breaking out in a big way up until when he tweaked that ankle again. So it'll be nice to see. I imagine the Giants would like to have him back too, seeing as they are not exactly overflowing with healthy receiving options currently. And then finally, Michael Thomas, who's eligible to come off the pup this week, is probably going to be activated, but he is probably still a couple weeks away from actually returning to football. Obviously, with guys like this where they've missed a couple weeks, he's going to have to get in football shape and start going through practices, start actually working with the team and everything. So based on what I was reading from reports, it sounds like he's probably back in more week 8 or 9, sometime in November. So plan accordingly there. But that was all of the news that I had. Did you guys have any news that you wanted to bring up? Anything that I didn't mention?
No,
That's about it.
Yeah, the major things for me were Kareem Hunt and Toney.
Yeah, Kareem Hunt is a doozy. All right.
That is.
Well, before we jump into the trade fours and tradeaways, if you don't already follow us on social media, make sure to hit the subscribe button on this video, ring the notification bell so that we get notified whenever new content drops, and follow us at all of our social handles on the screen in various spots here. At the Fantasy 4-Pack, at Fantasy4P_Ian, at Senpai Koala, and at the Foon. Twitter is the best place to reach us if you have any specific lineup questions, waiver questions, trade questions, anything of the sort. We love hearing from you guys. Let's jump over to some trade fours and tradeaways. Which one of you guys wants to be first up to bat here? Frankie, you look like you're itching to talk. Tell me why Leonard Fournette's a trade away.
So, looking at this Bucks backfield, nothing is particularly appealing to me. You're going to look at Leonard Fournette and you're going to say, he's had a couple of big games over the past couple of games, but I mean, he's only getting about 63% of the snaps, which, I mean, that's a decent number. It's not what I want to see from, I mean, in the New England game, he averaged, he got 82%, which is something I want to see a lot more of, like, if he's a guy who's going to be my RB1. And, I mean, the yardage is kind of there, but, I mean, I think that if you just look ahead at the rest of his schedule, he's got Chicago coming up, which has looked really kind of hit or miss against the run. He's got New Orleans, which has looked pretty good. He's got his bye coming up. And then after that, it goes Washington, New York, Indy, Atlanta, Buffalo, New Orleans again, Carolina, and the Jets. There's only a couple of matchups in there that I even trust, better running backs in. Not, like, never mind him. Like, I mean, obviously there are those locked and loaded guys, but as an RB, as an RB2, I'm not relying on the same output that I've been getting from Fournette, and I don't want to have to rely on that. I would rather try and move him now while, there are all these injuries to other running backs, and if I can afford to move him for, maybe a back that's, more talented that's been struggling, or even just, depending on what my wide receivers look like, maybe swap him out for a better receiver than I have and kind of just move around my flex pieces. I would be more comfortable with that rather than having to rely on, those big runs. And I mean, he's got 3 touchdowns over the past 3 games, but I mean, if you take the touchdowns out, look at the first 4 games, 10 points, 6 points, he had almost 100 yards in the third game against New England, but that was also on 82% snap share. If he's splitting time with these other guys and not getting a touchdown, he's not getting you the points that he's going to need to carry you to a win. And I would feel much more comfortable with either a more talented running back or, just swap him out for a higher upside wide receiver.
Yeah, as we've been saying all year, it's hard to trust any back in this backfield with the 3 guys that all could be just the guy for the day. Like, we could just see Ronald Jones catch the hot hand towards the end of the season, him being the younger back in this system, and just kind of taking enough work away that Leonard Fournette's untradeable. Basically, he's just good enough to sit on your bench, but not good enough to poor enough to drop. Like, get out of him now while you have the chance, because you don't want the running options in this offense.
Also, another thing that
I will say, as far as anyone could jump into this lead spot, something to consider with the Bucks backfield is that Ronald Jones' name has been being bandied about in trade talks as the deadline approaches, with all of the running back injuries around the league.
So another thing that I just completely blanked on for a minute was Brady's also throwing the ball a lot. And this Bucs offense looks more suited as a throwing team with, the run complement. And I mean, the Ronald Jones point is actually another kind of one of the only reasons why I wouldn't trade him away is because I kind of want to see how that shakes out. But I feel like if that point comes, it might be too late to get him off if he starts struggling again. But yeah, just like, I mean, if you just look at Brady's passing attempts and, his yardage overall, it's just, it seems like they want to go to a more pass heavy script to, kind of have Brady's last hurrah.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Leonard Fournette's a guy. No one in the league looks like they struggle as hard to gain 3 yards as Leonard Fournette does. So,
Yeah.
What about Miles Sanders?
I'm all in favor of getting that headache off my team, if only so I can watch someone run who's a little more fun to watch. Vitaly, why don't you? I know you've been a fan of this player for some time. Why don't you talk to us about our other trade away?
Antonio Gibson, welcome to the trade away section. He is not doing what we'd hope. That's just how it is. Sometimes there's hype, and the hype train derails, and I think it's at this point where it's fully derailing. The Washington football team looks out of sorts. They are just not playing good football as a whole, whether it's fantasy or just regular football. And we're seeing that with how J.D. McKissic is still there, still getting a large snap percentage, and he actually out-snapped Gibson, mostly due to the injury he came up with, that shin splint, which looks to be hampering him. I mean, the idea going into the season was we saw the breakaway talent, we saw the speed, the agility. He was great at catching the ball in what little college he did play, and we were hoping that would transition to a 3-tool back that could be an every down back that in a system that really needs him to perform, like a Derrick Henry before the Titans got good. But it never really materialized. The team doesn't want to use him as their only back, and it's just hurting his fantasy production. So get out of him now while he still has great name value. His points don't look that bad. You can explain away last week with a small injury that he should be able to bounce back from. This is one of those ones where it's just running backs on bad teams have such a low percentage chance of being top 10 backs, and you're already getting a guy who's off to a slow start, not getting enough carries. Like, it's just the whole system's bad, and you could do yourself a favor by going to somebody who is still on the hype train and thinks he can bounce back and just selling to him. Grab a running back, or maybe you do a 2-for-1. You send him Gibson and a wide receiver that looks shiny, maybe a guy we're going to talk about later or something like that. Just something else, package it in, get something that's actually useful for your team.
Yeah, I agree.
I will say as an aside for this one, you probably have to move fast if you're trying to trade Antonio Gibson, because news could come down at any point this week that severely tanks his value. It seems like he aggravated the injuries that he was already dealing with this past week. So if you're slow out of the gates on this one, you could end up being stuck with the hot potato.
Yeah, yep. I was gonna bring up that very thing actually, and this is something that we've seen with players in the past. I mean, like Julio Jones, and I mean, honestly, like Christian McCaffrey last year, we saw him come back, look good, and then he kind of he re-injured his injury, and then he was out again. And I mean, if you just look at the schedule too, he has Green Bay next week, but then he's got Denver, a bye, Tampa, Carolina. Those are not 3 teams that I want to put up a running back against that I got in the second round. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing as like a higher priced Fournette. It's like except he's on a bad team is the thing with Gibson. Washington hasn't looked good, and honestly, I don't think that they want to run the football that much.
I just don't think they're capable of running the football that much.
They're
a team that plays from behind, and unlike DeAndre Swift, he's not getting passing volume to sort of make up for the fact that his team's always chasing.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. You know what? I know I usually kick it to you guys for this, but I'm going to jump in with our first trade for, because he's a player that I have been the leader of the fan club of since he came into the league, more or less.
Wait, is it?
So I'm gonna talk to y'all about why Nick Chubb is a trade for this week. Obviously, we mentioned in the news Kareem Hunt missing at least 6 weeks, most likely, with that calf injury. Looked nasty when it happened. I know I saw being bandied about. People were thinking it might have been an Achilles. Fortunately, it's not. It's not to be season ending, but season ending is still a, you know, not necessarily a thing that has to happen for Nick Chubb to gain value from this. Nick Chubb is going to have at least 6 weeks, probably more, because Kareem Hunt's going to have to rehab coming back from this, of being the only guy or the only relevant guy in this backfield. And what would be normally a pretty hard player to trade for in a situation like this, Nick Chubb, one of the more talented running backs in the league, now has the full reins to a very run first, very run heavy team, is I guess kind of to the advantage of people trying to trade for him in a weird spot, because he's dealing with a calf injury of his own. Now, it doesn't sound like his anywhere near as serious as Kareem Hunt. Stefanski's saying he could be back this week. So if you're a smart and aggressive fantasy player in a position where you can either absorb one more week of injury if Chubb does miss this week, and you have some players that you can toss to the Chubb manager to get out there, I'd be moving aggressively for Chubb to try and pick him up, because he's going to be inheriting a very large workload on this Cleveland team. We already know that he's just an insanely talented running back. They love to use him in the red zone, and now he should be at least getting worked into the passing game as well, which is something we never really got to see before because Kareem Hunt was just the better pass catching back. The price is going to skyrocket once he actually gets to see the field. No Kareem Hunt. So the buy window is basically until kickoff Thursday. Maybe a little longer if he misses Thursday, but this buy window is closing rapidly. People should be moving very quickly to try and pick up what could be a league winning back in Nick Chubb.
Yeah, similar to, I mean, you guys are both in the league where I did like a huge trade for Aaron Jones, and the thing about guys like Chubb and Jones is you're gonna have to pay that premium price because they are super talented league winners. And with Chubb, the thing that actually interested the most is just look at his snap percentage with Kareem Hunt there and his yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
Look at against Minnesota, 47% snaps. He still hit 100 yards. 56% snaps against LA, 161 yards. Granted, one of those was a long one, but I mean, even without
he breaks off more long runs than a lot of running backs in the league.
And it's like even without the touchdown volume, because he only has 4 in the year. I mean, with Kareem Hunt's not there, that's going to go up. You're going to see his snap percentage go up. You're probably going to see the yardage go up, and it's just a no-brainer. And I think the biggest thing too is like another chip in his trade cap is he hasn't really had that Derrick Henry 36-point game yet. He hasn't had anything above 30. He hasn't had anything above 25. So it kind of looks like it's giving the false illusion that he doesn't have that ceiling. And I think that's because he's been splitting his time with Kareem Hunt, who they both had, really nice, 25-point-ish median ceilings or whatever. But with Kareem Hunt not there, there's not really another guy to take that volume away from him. And I think that that's, dramatically going to raise his ceiling up. And you can even sell it with the, they play Denver and Pittsburgh next, 2 teams that are hard to run against. I mean, if you're trying to trade for him, try and do like a 2-for-1 with, a lesser running back, maybe a, higher wide receiver 1, and, just see what you can get. I would say float that first. I mean, honestly, if you have the horses, float a 1-for-1. It never hurts to ask. And because of the injury and because he hasn't really had that pop game, you might be able to get him for cheaper than you should.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. The big thing I just wanted to bring in here is for people who might be looking at it as like maybe Kareem Hunt's going to come back earlier. Like as Ian was saying, this did look like a nasty injury. And on top of that, with the 6-week timetable, they might stick to that 6 weeks because that puts them, he would come back on the bye week. So that means, he's not coming back for 8 weeks. So you're looking at basically Kareem Hunt coming back for the last game before most people's fantasy playoffs are going to start, which will be week 14 against Baltimore. So you're just getting a straight run all the way to the bye with Nick Chubb. And with byes starting, and now we're through the first chunk of them, and then maybe this week. Maybe you don't get the deal done this week, but week 7 still against Denver. It's not the best matchup, but I still think Chubb's going to be great in it. But if he sits, that's even a better time to strike because through week 6 to week 7, you can be like, hey, listen, I'll give you this running back who's already passed his bye. You don't have to worry about this late bye who for a team that might be struggling, missing 2 weeks of Chubb. Be like, all right, I can't afford a week 13 bye when I'm fighting to get in the playoffs and having my stud running back sit. You could be like, hey, listen, here's, if he sits this week, you go, here's Zeke. Zeke is sitting. I'll take Chubb plus another guy or something like that. So I think that bye week is really going to play into the fact that I think they're going to make sure that Kareem Hunt's good to go for the playoffs because they're going to try and make that push. So I think he's not coming back till 14.
Sure, fair points. Also, Frankie, just because you mentioned that Chubb hasn't been getting the touchdown volume, but 4 touchdowns in 6 games means in 66% of his games he's scoring a touchdown. That puts him on pace for 11.5 touchdowns on the season. So he's getting touchdown volume. That's actually the double-digit touchdown volume. I would say is pretty good. Let's jump to our final trade for here. Who wants to take this one?
I mean, I think usually we pass it around, but I feel like this is another one of your guys.
Yeah, I was saying, I think you should start with this one as
Okay, fine. I'll take this one. So Kadarius Toney is our other trade for here. Might sound weird to be listing a guy who's 2 weeks removed from an almost 200-yard outpouring to be listing as a trade for, but Kadarius Toney is in kind of a special case right here. Obviously, his snaps were trending up in week 5. Didn't do a lot actually on the field, but he at least was out there more than in week 4. Week 5, he had the massive offensive explosion, and then in week 6, he unfortunately got injured very early in the game. He re-aggravated that ankle injury that he had been dealing with throughout the week, and was forced to leave the game. Did not manage to return to the field. The reason why I think this makes Kadarius Toney a huge trade for is because for anyone with eyeballs who was actually watching the Giants game, which I imagine probably wasn't that many because it wasn't a very good game, but anyone who has eyeballs and watched the beginning of it, Kadarius Toney looked great. He was making very impressive football moves. He looked like a polished professional out there. He got off to a very hot start. 3 catches in the first half of the first quarter of that game. And I think the only thing that really stopped him from having another really big offensive day against what ended up being a pretty high-scoring Rams team was that ankle injury. Kadarius Toney managers at this point might be sitting there thinking they missed their sell window. That he was a flash in the pan. He's returning to fantasy irrelevance. If that's the case, I think that he presents a very interesting opportunity to go out and buy a player who otherwise would likely be a pretty expensive guy to have to go out and pick up. And assuming this ankle injury isn't a long-term ankle injury that doesn't cost him anything more than maybe a week or two, he should be able to provide a ton of value for your team down the stretch. And now you can probably acquire him for a backup running back. Especially if the team he's on is dealing with some injuries, maybe you can get him for a Khalil Herbert, or you can get him for an Alex Collins, who otherwise would likely not be enough to get that deal done. But you can play up the fact that he had a bad week right after his good week and he's injured, and just try and go grab him, stash him on your bench until he's good to go. And then once he's back, he seems like he's the lead dog on that Giants team. Sterling Shepard was not factoring in any major way while he was on the field. So I'm not worried about any one of those Giants receivers taking time away from Kadarius Toney. He's the most talented guy in that wide receiver core. And I think with time, people are going to look back on this part of the season and realize that this was a golden opportunity to get a guy that could bring you a fantasy championship onto their squad.
Yeah, I think
if you have the cojones to move on him.
I think the main thing for me is basically what you just said with, he had that huge game, and then after this, we saw a dud. We saw him not put up the numbers that people thought he was going to put up coming off of that huge game. And whether that's due to injury or whatever, a lot of people just, it kind of, is just not really good. The good thing about fantasy is that a lot of people just look at the numbers. Like, there's, how many points did they get me? What's the context? It doesn't matter. I just need the points. So if the Kadarius Toney manager, is one of those people, you can sell it exactly like you said, where there's kind of a lot of, I guess, bad blood in general with fantasy, where players have these big games, you pick them up or you go out and you buy them, and then it kind of comes back to bite you in the ass. And that's exactly what I would do. I would trade maybe like a backup running back, maybe, just a wide receiver too that's been playing above their ceiling, And, you can get a guy who's going to basically command that wide receiver room in New York. And they're a team that's going to be playing from behind a lot, especially, with their running back struggles. Honestly, their entire team's health struggles. And yeah, no, I really like Toney a lot as a buy, especially like low right now, because again, same thing. Sell offer like a cheap 1-for-1.
Yeah.
And I mean, the manager might be savvy and they might see the upside with him, so they might decline. But again,
Even if they see the upside, you can probably still get him for cheaper than what you would have otherwise had.
100%.
Because he is still injured, coming off a quote unquote bad game.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like I said, it's one of those things where this is a trade that I would approach starting on the lower side, just feeling out the manager, like, hey,
Yeah.
you looking to trade him? Sell it that you need a guy to fill in for a bye week because next week's going to be pretty rough for buys.
Yes, it
Like,
is.
and he's a good play. I want to trade for him instead of just trying to scoop off the waiver wire. Is he available? Because I think Kadarius Toney's in a weird spot right now where he has value. There's some managers that will be in on him. Some managers might be a little more out. And it's one of those things where you have to play it by ear and make sure that you're not. If you talk to a manager who's more on the out and you come in with like a little bit more of a higher value trade than they might think, you might kind of tip them off that there's some more value there. So that's why you want to feel out where they feel Kadarius Toney's at right now, and then gauge your trade appropriately. Because if you just go in, maybe they're huge on Khalil Herbert, and you just throw Khalil Herbert at them, like, wait, well, hold on, is Kadarius Toney worth more? Am I overselling? Are they going to walk back that trade? And like, that's why talking to somebody before you just shotgun a trade at them usually is the best way to get something done. Just to say, like, what are you thinking? Where are you at with this player? What do you need? Do you see anything that works between our team? Is there some guy on my squad you think is around that level? Like, talking to people before you shotgun, because if you shotgun and you go a little too high, they could pull back. I'm like, all right, well, you already went high. I'm going to make you go higher because this is your floor, clearly.
Yeah, totally. I think we are good to wrap it up on the trade fours and tradeaways there. Obviously, there are plenty of other guys in the league that you can be hunting for to trade right now, or guys that you're moving off your squad. So like we said earlier, if you have any specific questions about that, feel free to send us over those trade offer or those trade questions in the DMs on Twitter, and we will love to give you our specific input on those trade situations. I think it's time that we go over the waivers for this week. There are, I think, some important waivers too that we have to touch on, because once again there were some fairly impactful injuries this week. Leading in with the running backs, somehow, even with Chris Carson dealing with an injury for the past couple weeks now, Alex Collins is still under 50% rostered. Are you guys both on the same page to me that if Alex Collins is on your waiver wire, he should be your top waiver ad?
Yes, even though I accidentally dropped him for Brandon Ayuk. But no, yeah, Collins, he's just a very easy, just shotgun, not shotgun all your money at, but, he is a must attempt to add because of how heavy the Seahawks run the ball and how heavy they want to run the ball. And the fact that he doesn't look like, a top 5 backup, but he looks, like a nice fill-in back and backup.
He's never going to wow you with his football performances. We know what Alex Collins is, but he is a very capable backup. He's an easy top 20 guy while Chris Carson is out.
Yeah.
So he provides a lot of upside for fantasy managers who are hurting at the position right now. My number 2, with Kareem Hunt out for some time, Nick Chubb potentially missing this week. This is a bit of a risky one because we aren't going to know Nick Chubb's status likely until after waivers clear. But as it stands right now at 8:25 p.m. on Monday, I have Dearness Johnson as my as my number 2 to pick up, or Demetric Felton, really whichever one of the two Cleveland backups you believe is the more valuable of the two.
I think Johnson's going to be the more valuable of the two. He seems like he's going to be the guy who's going to be that early down back for Cleveland.
Yeah. Neither of them saw much work this past week, but so there's not a ton of clarity on that front. But which one of those guys are you guys targeting, and how much fab are you throwing at them, given that this is probably a bit of an unknown situation?
I'm definitely more interested in Dearness here, mainly just because like I said, as Frankie was saying, I think he's going to fit more into the Nick Chubb role, and I'd rather have the Nick Chubb replacement as opposed to the Kareem Hunt replacement, where I feel like Kareem Hunt really makes hay because of his skill level in that position, whereas Chubb gets a lot more of the work. So for me, Dearness is the guy I'm going for, and as far as Fab, because he might end up being nothing if Chubb goes. I'm restricting myself. I think 15 is probably my max as far as percentage.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less than the 15. I mean, again, that depends how your running backs look, but I mean, again, we might see Chubb this week, so he might end up being, just next to nothing. So I mean, I think my ceiling's probably 10%.
Okay. The only other running back that I guess, or pair of running backs that I wanted to really kind of mention here was the Baltimore Ravens duo of either Tyson Williams or, oh Christ, I'm forgetting his name.
Devonta
Hasn't
Freeman.
been relevant. Devonta Freeman. Uh, Obviously, Latavius Murray injured his ankle in that Ravens game. He did not come back into the game, to the best of my knowledge.
He did not.
Haven't seen anything as to how much time he could be missing, if any. But obviously, someone on that team has to carry the rock a bit, and it seemed like it was Latavius Murray up until when he left the game. Which one of those two are you guys trusting? Are you trusting, old ass Devonta Freeman, or do you think Tyson's gonna get the nod now that Latavius is out? And regardless of which one you're trusting, how much fab you throwing at him?
Oh, this is a tough one. I was looking at this situation, trying to figure out who, if anyone, I want to throw at, just because running back is that depleted that you might need a guy like Tyson Williams. But honestly, I think I'm going Devonta Freeman here. He only got 9 carries in this game, but he made use of them with 5.5, per carry. Was able to find the end zone. He has experience in this position. It's more just I'm more worried about is his body spent. But I think he's good enough to get through one full game at least. So for a plug and play for this week, I am willing to go ahead and go grab Devonta Freeman on the cheaper side. If I'm lower on Fab and I don't want to go throw at the more top options out there, I'm probably spending 10% max. And that's if I really need someone for this week, because I know that there's definitely going to be a team who just had injuries, plus, buys might just put you in that kind of spot.
Yeah, I'm
Sure.
I'm kind of in that same. I'm kind of in the same tier as Dearness Johnson for Freeman. I mean, I think Freeman is, I trust him a little bit more than Tyson because we saw him have a big, kind of week one, then kind of just taper off, and whether that's due to Murray or just the fact that they are just not using him for whatever reason. But I think that Freeman looked better out there, and I'm kind of in the same vein. 10%. If I need a running back, I'm not going to like overpay for him because I think, I mean, granted this could just be coach speak, but Harbaugh has said that he doesn't believe Murray's injury is going to be that serious. But you never want to, it's better to stay on the precautionary side when especially with the team that runs as heavy as Baltimore.
I agree. Any other running backs you guys wanted to mention before we jump over to wide receivers?
As far as stuff on the waiver wire, I don't think there's much out there. It's almost week 7.
I think the one guy we should consider and just make sure people have on their radar is Rashad Penny. Alex Collins should be picked up if he is out there, but he is dealing with some issues with his hip and his glute. So if that ends up holding him up and he's not ready to go, then Penny is from the coach ready to roll and at full speed. So if you can plug him in at least for this week to get the starter for Seattle, that is a valuable position.
Okay. Jumping to wide receivers here now. There is not a lot that we care about at that position this week, but we're going to try and find some options for you. So I guess my top waiver ad of the week is probably Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's still not rostered as heavily as he should be. Assuming that the Lions offense can get moving in any sort of uh, positive fashion with how they have been lately, he should have some value for fantasy managers, especially going into the bye-apocalypse here, where it's just everyone and their mother is on a bye. Are you guys targeting anyone else at the wide receiver position over Amon-Ra, or is he the consensus top pickup at the wide receiver position for all of us?
I think that's probably the guy I'm looking at the most. I mean, we know the Lions are going to have to throw the ball a lot. Quintez Cephas is banged up, and
Mm-hmm.
there's nobody else really that's there. I was interested in Rashard Bateman a little bit, but
Rashad.
yeah, I still want to see a little bit more before I kind of even want to stash him. I mean, he didn't really do much with his 4 catches. I mean, 30 yards, but
Oh, I definitely think he's a stash right now. I mean, the Ravens even said with Rashad Bateman that he was going to be slowly worked back into the game. That they weren't going to just thrust a full workload on a rookie coming back from core muscle surgery his first week back. So
and I
I
mean,
think you kind of have to throw his. I think you kind of have to throw his game log out the window right now.
he still got
And it's just, do you believe in him or not?
he's still got 65% of snaps too.
Yeah. So I think he's 100% a great stash. I just don't know how much immediate value he's going to give your team.
Yeah.
Other guys to mention as far as wide receiver pickups: Marquez Callaway, Donovan Peoples-Jones looked pretty good, and Odell could be missing time again. That entire Cleveland team is pretty beat up, so he could be just a recipient of volume just by subtraction of other parts. Tim Patrick is once again a waiver ad for wide receiver because people just aren't adding Tim Patrick for whatever reason. And then I think Sterling Shepard is an interesting wide receiver to mention if he's out there on your waiver wire, because the Giants just don't really have anyone else.
And I mean, Kadarius Toney's banged up.
Well, right, but that's what I'm saying is the Giants don't really have anyone else. Sterling Shepard might just have to catch the ball, and if he can, then great. But wide receiver is a little bit more of a wasteland at this point in the season, I think.
Yeah, you're just kind of getting the guys who you hope will get touchdowns.
Honestly, with wide receiver, I think I'm more interested in playing the log on Tuesday morning and see who got dropped game, because there's a chance that somebody might get dropped that carries some actual value that you want to go ahead and throw your fab bucks behind.
Fair.
Let's go look at tight ends here for a moment now, because we have 2 tight ends to mention this week. So obviously, Zach Ertz got traded midweek from the Philadelphia Eagles over to the Arizona Cardinals. To me, and I know this one is probably a contentious point because someone on the show really loves Ricky Seals-Jones, but
it's me.
I think that Zach Ertz is my top waiver ad for the tight end position this week. Obviously, the Cardinals spread the ball around a lot. They were using Max Williams a decent amount before he had a season-ending injury, and Zach Ertz still looks like he has it. He was having a little bit of a resurgent season before he got traded. I could see him having plenty of value on that Cardinals squad, and it's a pretty fast-paced offense. And then obviously Ricky Seals-Jones looked pretty good in relief of Logan Thomas this past week. The Washington team is going to be behind a lot, so they're going to be throwing a lot. He could just be just a recipient of volume because someone aside from Terry has to catch the football.
Yeah.
Are you guys ranking them the same way that I am?
I like Ertz. He's a little bit harder to find out there just because he's still a little bit higher rostered. But I do think people need to be picking up Ricky Seals-Jones just because he's getting amazing snap percentage and he's actually seeing volume, which is hard to find on the waiver wire. And the fact that he's only 39% roster right now as a sleeper, I feel like it's just criminally low for how bad tight end is out there. I feel like people are just holding on to names that they hope will come back to fruition or something, but a guy that's getting 100% of the snaps at the tight end position and getting, between 5, 6, 7 targets a game, you're not going to find that elsewhere on the waiver wire.
Yeah, I think I like Zach Ertz more than Ricky Seals-Jones, and that's only for the point that, Max Williams had a season-ending injury. And the Cardinals, I don't know what their tight end room looks like, but they didn't just be like, oh, we'll just ride it out with all the receivers that we have, and we'll we'll throw a no-name tight end in there. No, they went out and they traded for Zach Ertz, which means they plan on using their tight end. So I think that Zach Ertz is probably going to see, the same, if not more volume than Max Williams was. And this is a fast-paced offense that likes to run a lot of plays. And, I mean, he might not get 100% of the snaps, but, I think that the snaps he's going to get in the Arizona offense are going to be more valuable than the snaps that RSJ is going to get in the Washington offense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we wrap this show up, we're going to give you guys our streaming quarterback targets and streaming defense targets of the week, as we always do. This week, we've got Derek Carr as our top streaming quarterback option. He is 49% rostered and draws Philadelphia this week. After him, we have Teddy Bridgewater playing against Cleveland on Thursday. Cleveland looks very depleted right now and is not the team that we all expected them to be due to all these injuries. They can be taken advantage of through the air and on the ground, which means that Teddy is setting up for a pretty decent day. He is currently 27% rostered. And then finally, you have Tua Tagovailoa versus Atlanta, who just is a sieve when it comes to giving up fantasy points, also 27% rostered. And for defenses, our top defensive ad of the week is New England versus the New York Jets. They slaughtered them earlier in the season. They're probably going to slaughter them again this week. They're 43% rostered, so you might not be able to find them out there, but if they're out there, they should be prioritized. After them, we're looking at Arizona versus Houston, 22% rostered. Houston's dumpster fire. Arizona can really get after the quarterback. I don't see any way in which Arizona isn't forcing sacks and potentially forcing turnovers in this game. So they are a very tasty prospect if they are available. And then finally, if you can't find them, the Saints draw Seattle. They are 26% rostered, and Seattle just is nowhere near the same offense they are with Russ as they are with Geno Smith. So I think you can comfortably expect this to be a game where there are going to be turnover opportunities because Geno just isn't that good and the Saints defense is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that'll do it for us this week. Join us later this week as we bring you guys our countdown show where we start breaking down this fairly rough slate of games just from a fantasy perspective. And obviously, like I said, if you have any specific waiver questions for us this week, specific trade questions, lineup questions, anything of the like, make sure to reach out to us on Twitter. That is the best place to get at us. Hope you guys all have a good Tuesday.